Hello there, proxies. Wanted to pop in and talk about ZZZ today because I watched a video by Flossin on You that piqued my interest as a discussion piece. And given I don't feel like writing a college thesis of a YouTube comment, I decided to just speak into the void aimlessly. Now, the simple premise of the video is that defense agents don't really have a home in Zenless Zone Zero's gameplay loop, that they are inherently flawed, and that Caesar King ruined the class. Now, I may be just a tiny bit biased. Caesar King is my wife after all, and I'll be damned if I hear any acting overlord slander in this house.
What did you say about my wife?
While there are many things he said that I kinda disagree with heavily, I do agree with the overall idea that they lack their own home. However, before I get into that, I'd like to just give my own answer to the video's baseline premise. Defense agents are on-field supports. Between Ben, Seth, and Caesar, the one constant we see in their kits, other than the shield, is their parry attacks. Parry attack with an asterisk for Seth, he just gains super armor, but the function is ultimately the same. Needless to say, in order to actually get the proper benefits of these parry attacks, the agent does need to actively be on the field and engage the enemies if you want to use them. This is in stark contrast to support agents who only need to drop in, EX skill, and peace out faster than your dad on a milk run. Though, to be fair, you can do the same thing with a defense agent, however, that's only to apply their buffs, not engaging with their gameplay. Now, in my opinion, I think the shields themselves are a bit of a mislead. They're not actually important to their job, I say that in quotes. It's used more as a vehicle for their buffs in a way that is thematic with their class. Now, that might sound absolutely absurd, but to hopefully help you understand my point, let's analyze the support and stun classes. When we take a look at it, stun, defense, and support, all three of these classes actually fall under the buffer umbrella. Supports just do it the best of the three. Of 5 classes, 3 must buff the team. You'd only need to read the stun classes kits to realize that they provide more than just a stun window. We have stun damage multiplier increases, res down debuffs, chain attack vulnerability, and with lighter, targeted elemental vulnerability debuffs. What's my point with this? Well, essentially, stun agents should be described as offensive supports. Their main job is increasing the day's meter, and in order to do that, they engage the enemy as an attacker would, dodging and weaving through attacks, but doing far less damage than an archetypal DPS agent can. And thus, naturally, support agents are actually off-field supports. The reason I wanted to make these distinctions is because I feel like it highlights the fact that for the majority of combat, these 3 classes inhabit the same job on the team, they just have a different focus. Thus, stun characters have higher days, and support characters have a higher buffing capacity. And it's through your drive disc builds that they develop their sub DPS potential. All this to say that Flossom pointed out that defense agents do a little bit of everything, but in truth, I would actually say all 3 of these classes were designed to do a little bit of everything. The only reason defense agents seem different is because they don't have an extreme. You only need to build impact on Caesar to get full benefits, and to that effect, you could just get the 4-piece Protopunk, a 2-piece Shockstar Disco, and only fully level an Impact Slot 6 and her W engine. And voila, you now have a fully complete Overlord. The choice of farming crit rate, crit damage, and attack to pump up her personal DPS is optional, much the same for stun and support. However, I should note that them not having extreme is probably a bit of a inaccurate statement. With Caesar's 1000 attack buff and Seth's impressive 100 anomaly proficiency, they lean more towards being support agents than just an all-rounder. The real point with this is that the reason they feel like they're just a tiny bit of all 3 classes is due to their on-field nature. Alright, at this rate, you're probably wondering where I'm taking this, and to put it quite simply, I think we're just looking at these classes and their roles the wrong way. I wouldn't say that defense agents are flawed fundamentally like Flossin would. I would say it's that the game fails to take advantage of the class's potential through meaningful gameplay advantages, and that the ease and convenience built into each agent robs them of what would be an inbuilt value. This is an action fighting game. Diversity in combat is enough of a benefit on its own when you balance out each of the roles to yield similar results. Look at Royal Guard from DMC, for example. You could play the whole game without touching it, but nobody would argue it didn't have a place in that game.
Man, I'm bored.
Saying that you could just dodge is a non argument, in my opinion, because the value add is the player experience, not pragmatic utility. Going toe to toe with a boss, planting your feet, and parrying them is an awesome way to engage with the game. It's why defensive assists are so cool and can really elevate the experience when they hit at the right moment. I also feel like these types of units offer more flexibility in unit types and gameplay, such as any stunner or attackers who don't want a lot of field time. For instance, like Kaleda, who frequently needs to dodge before she can use her EX skills in combos. Now, I don't know how you guys feel, but dodge counter, dodge counter, dodge counter can feel a little stale after the 10th time. Of course, that can fluctuate based on the enemy. I'm more or less just stating an experience I've had with Kaleda, where often I find myself interrupting her combo into EX skill because I need to dodge. But setting all of that aside to get back to that ease and convenience point, ZZZ being designed for a more casual experience means all of the other characters have a very overrepresented mechanic in the game, and that is the full invulnerability from EX skill. The fact that you can gain the benefit of Caesar's shield by spending your energy means your stunners and supports will likely never take meaningful damage so long as you're mindful of your switch-ins. Just think about it. You've likely used the fact your EX skill provides iframes to get out of attacks you don't want to dodge, or because you know you can just press it twice in a row and then pop your ult into a full-on stun phase, or for more stylish purposes like flowing into a combo string. Lycon's extended EX skill shows this the worst, as well as the fact lighter in morale boost gains anti-interrupt and severely reduced damage received, which negates the need of a shield in the first place. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think we should change this or remove it. I believe the comfort and wiggle room these mechanics can provide for every character make the game way more accessible and more fun, and let's be honest, I think most people come to their gotcha games for a fairly chill and casual experience. The main point is that the prevalence robs defense agents of a hard to find utility, given most agents can adequately defend themselves. It removes the need for your moment to moment gameplay to be as on point because you're relatively safe at all times. However, jumping over to more DPS oriented options, this is where the failure to take advantage of their potential comes into play. And for that, I have a simple question. Where is an attacker or anomaly agent who has to charge up their attack like Seth does? I mean, we have one. Her name is Miyabi, and she's completely invincible while doing it. So she doesn't even need her health to be protected. Furthermore, why isn't parrying rewarded? In Deadly Assault, you gain performance points for defense assisting against certain enemies. Why don't they allow Caesar and Ben to gain points from their counters? Even Seth get kind of cheated by taking the hit, and once he provides a quick assist, it counts as an evasive assist. It would be the same timing regardless. Performance points are capped anyway, so it wouldn't get out of hand, and you'd honestly use up a lot of time trying to farm it as well while losing damage. This could even provide extra value since defense agents would be the only one who could defensive assist against red flash attacks. But taking that concept a step further, why don't these parry mechanics stagger enemies the same way a defensive assist would? Allowing defense agents the ability to mimic this mechanic would allow them to change up the gameplay loop in a way that feels powerful. Now, I don't mean they should do this all the time, but if you learn the boss and know when they're going to do a really big attack, that's when you should be able to stagger them. Expanding more on that idea, we could also try to apply a bigger damage amp for them. Imagine, if you would, a world where parrying a boss ult or heavy attack impaired them. Or, for the purposes of this discussion, apply the status known as rattled. When an enemy is rattled, you will apply a mini stun window damage multiplier. It could either be half as strong or only exist for a very short time to allow a quick burst of damage. Perhaps a rattled enemy will throw a telegraphed counterattack or become more aggressive. Thus, when you swap over to your DPS character, you're able to protect your attacker or anomaly while they get to essentially duel the enemy. You would instantly have a direct synergy if you combined it with a charge up attack like the one Seth has that I mentioned earlier. A mechanic like this would generate a very minor DPS phase to go along with the major DPS phase and can allow you to offload some of your DPS's resources if you're really sitting on it for a while. Right now, the most Caesar's Shield does in that regard, other than protecting you when you're being a little careless, is allow Piper, Corrin, and Bernice the ability to just EX special and not care. Now, don't get me wrong, I appreciate that. I am a day one Piper main, have been ever since I did her standard banner showcase. I would never deny my weapon its purpose. I am going to press the fun button, and I am going to spin to Piper win. And nobody can stop! And you know damn well I am going to slowly walk upon ye with my anxiety-ridden social disaster chainsaw-loving bean bun named Corrin. But there is some utility with Piper being able to just dodge counter to still get a anomaly buildup rate while she saves energy from the big slam, and then she just goes right back into it when she's done. Discounting her Wenjin, you could easily give her a benefit with shielders if you made it the case that as long as you commit to a spin, the damage amp actually goes up much higher on an anomaly proc. But to be totally fair, Piper is strong enough as is. And after stumbling upon the world's strongest core in main, Corn Zone, in their excellently edited and presented core and build guide video, they point out that committing to a spin isn't always the best play. You can in fact net more damage by cramming as many EX skill hits in as you can on the stun phase. By the way, I really recommend checking this channel out. The amount of effort I saw put into their presentation blew me away, and I enjoy watching their core and showcases. So, funny enough, once again, another benefit that could naturally be built in doesn't really get rewarded. Also, Bernice's iframes last just long enough that you likely refilled her afterburner anyway. So that's another easy W for defense agents being stripped away and made redundant. This is why I believe Flossen's claim that Caesar ruined defense as a class is actually just
erroneous! Erroneous! Erroneous on both counts!
Lighter and Lycon do that more through S rank privilege and the actual casual nature of the game as well. If anybody really did anything to damage the standing of defense agents, look no further than Astra Yao.
This song is dedicated to the world!
Who is a sustainer, provides protection through extremely abundant quick assists. Then there's Tremolo for her personal DPS, while also preserving assist points. Caesar has nothing on making an entire class seem redundant like Astra Yao does.
He copied my whole fucking flow! Word for word, bar for bar!
Sure, you can still get knocked around, but it's just gonna get healed back anyway. In the grand scheme of things, Caesar's complete anti-interrupt will not hurt the next defense agent at all. All Hoyoverse would need to do is take Lighter's targeted buffing style and combine it with Seth to create an Ether Electric Disorder enabler, and you'd instantly create a use case for them that frees up your Astra Yao or Caesar. There are other elemental variations you could do with this. I just chose those two because if I recall properly, they're the strongest disorder in the game. Flossen actually read the class descriptions in his video, and defense agents mentioned this: tanking attacks and seizing the upper hand. The shield being pointless isn't their problem, it's the fact that their kit doesn't actually seize anything. The reason why I said the shield isn't very important to the class is because it does its job the second it is applied, which is providing protection or sustaining for the team. The problem that we're running into here isn't a fundamentally flawed class, it's more or less a game that fundamentally refuses to give them a mechanic that actually sets them apart from the others. Imagine the instant synergy you could get if Caesar was able to use her ult or build up resources from parrying to allow your next teammate the ability to chain attack. This would instantly allow you to run Koleda and Evelyn, for example. Combine this with that mini stun window I mentioned earlier after a major parry, and you give the defense agent the ability to ramp up damage in a way that's unique to only them. Defense has a lot of untapped potential to add an extra layer of depth to this game that can really spice things up. The devs kind of just need to stop leaving them out to dry. They have the same capabilities as the other units, but without an actual niche to fit into. They at best just serve as the best buffer for on field DPS agents, allowing them to be more careless in combat if it allows them to pump out some more damage. Think of a team up with Annie Shielder and Jane Doe. I mean, there's only two she actually cares about, so it's not really that hard. Both Miyabi and Yanagi have a parry in their kits. This isn't problematic on its own. In fact, I think it's pretty cool. But the fact they provide the exact same value as a defense agent's counter is the problem. Defense agents need an actual mechanic to go alongside their parries. And I understand that Flossin may very well have the same opinion as me about them needing more mechanics. In fact, I believe he said as much, or at the very least, something along the same lines, when he mentioned enemies needed some mechanic changes for defense agents. I mostly wanted to challenge the notion that they are fundamentally flawed, because I believe that is calling attention to the wrong issue. Bringing back Disputed Node doesn't solve the issue and introduces a new problem where you're running the risk of making a fundamentally unfun game mode that applies pressure on you to have a defense agent. And that's just the wrong approach. It should be just as fun without them as it is with them. And if you're good enough at the game, you still don't need them anyway. I'll be honest, I'll pass on fighting two Thanatoses any day of the week. I also, in fact, did not enjoy my time getting double teamed by Pulchra and Moors that one time. Another example is a comment I saw Flossin agree with, where they said defense agents shouldn't exist and should just be supports. But that would run counter to the off field design of support agents. When you design different combat approaches, you give them different classes. Otherwise, you make them feel more unfocused. Once again, you can only make this statement if you view them as buffers and not as a unique approach to the actual gameplay loop, which is where focusing on the wrong issue can lead to wrong solutions. Flossin at one point said that Caesar's buff will make it so the next defense agent will either have to have the same anti-interrupt or something just as good to get people to pull them. But let's be real, that describes quite literally every gacha character ever. Just wait for the next S rank support agent to drop and the discussion that'll inevitably crop up around their value, if you even need them if you have Astra Yao, etc., etc. You guys get the drill at this rate. And I think it focuses on the wrong buff anyway. Like I said before, you could easily create another defense agent by just giving them desirable buffs. Oh, and before I wrap things up here, this video is still titled In Defense of Defense, so I'd prefer not to leave us off on a negative note. So I'm just going to share my more earnest thoughts and opinions about them. As I said from the very beginning, they are on-field support agents. Caesar is meant to fill the same role on the team as characters like Sokaku and Astra Yao. Their primary purpose is to buff the team. While it's true they can provide stun, that's really only Caesar's direct focus. Ben is a very deliberate DPS character, and Seth is designed for anomaly agents. I actually have zero issues with their design fundamentally, because I believe their true value is something that's far less perceptible, and that thing is quite simply diversity in your approach and in the combat loop itself. Support agents? They just aren't designed to take the field. That's not to say you can't use them on field, but when you look at how their kits operate the way they attack, they just aren't meant to engage in combat like a DPS or a stunner does. And with my example of Kaleda, there can be cases where agents aren't designed to really be an on-field frontrunner. While anomaly agents can appreciate the stun window, they are the damage type that doesn't need it. Hence, they don't really need a stunner. Defense agents are designed to operate as anchors who handle the active enemy while your stunner, support, or DPS character gather energy, and they provide opportunities or safety to accumulate DPS resources. In that sense, they operate kind of like a bridge between varied character designs and give people more wiggle room to engage with and express their combat approach to their liking. That's why Caesar is a stunner. She is designed to support two DPS agents. Now, whether that's going to be dual attacker, dual anomaly, or a split of attacker and anomaly, she has a kit designed to benefit both of those damage types equally. Perhaps she won't stun quite as fast, but that's just giving more breathing room to your anomaly to get DPS in before the burst damage phase kicks in for your attacker. Ben is a sub DPS. He's all about all out aggression and pairs together with that playstyle. You really see this with his at launch team and the fire set. S11 is going to be running low crit rate but high crit damage, so she can take advantage of the 4-piece Inferno medal. Ben providing 16 extra crit rate meant she actually got 44 when it came time for the actual damage phase. And what he lacked in flat out attack buffs, he made up for in the fact that he and Kaleda are designed to be a sub DPS duo who synergize extremely well together. So, rather than pinning all of the major damage on S11, Ben Bigger and Kaleda could pair up and whittle down an enemy before the burst phase happens. And that's why Seth's parry is actually a flurry of attacks that he charges up. It's because he's building Anomaly to help proc Disorder, while also not screwing over the Weeping Gemini W engine. In my view, this is what defense agents offer. Not a clear defined job that they slot in and out for, but an expansion away from a very rigid team structure and a way to allow more agents to be designed in ways that don't end up feeling samey. And honestly, I appreciate that a lot. I guess it's really a question of, do you think that is a worthwhile addition? To me, they are an element that makes the game more fun, and so long as the ZZZ devs keep designing the game with their viability in mind, there really isn't a problem, just a preference. See, they are designed to fit into the current gameplay loop in a seamless fashion. That rattled state I mentioned earlier is more of a way to explain how you could add a direct and easily noticeable benefit. It's not something that desperately needs to happen to save the class. And yeah, I would absolutely love it if Caesar could grant one chain attack after, let's say, 3 EX parries. This design choice would show a very tangible goal in mind when you're allowing them to take the field. But if I'm being honest, I'm pretty happy with defense as is. Luckily for me, I love Caesar. She's one of, if not my favorite agents to play because of the flexibility she can provide for me, and her parry feels incredibly satisfying to pull off. And when I run her on the field, there's a certain power I feel in knowing I get to plant my feet and no diff any attack that comes my way. And an experience that can delight the player tends to be worth its weight in gold. To me, at the very least. But that's just my opinion. What do you guys think about this? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Hopefully, we can chat about it in the comments. In the meantime, I hope you all have enough Denny's to level up your agents. The ZZZ Bakery is very expensive, but the cakes are oh so worth it. See you around.